Hi everyone, this is Kyle with K-Debate. I'm doing a video on a video I watched previously. It was Jon Stewart talking about the Vatican. This is a while ago. The Vatican, the Pope made a comment about global warming being an issue that needs to be addressed, and the backlash from conservatives or just anti-global warming people saying the Pope should stay out of that. The Pope is not an expert on this. He is an expert on morals and, religious doctrine. So they said, don't listen to him, listen to the people that are actually informed. But then when asked about that, they were saying, don't listen to the scientists either, because they are biased. They want money. They want, they have an agenda. So don't listen to the scientists either. So the politicians were saying, don't listen to the Pope because he's not informed. Listen to the people that are informed. Don't listen to the scientists, even though they're informed, but they have bias. Listen to the politicians because they are unbiased. And don't listen to all the politicians, only listen to the politicians that say what they say. So there is a major factual kind of issue there. There's something that does not add up. There's several things that don't add up. And anyone that's really looking at it from a critical standpoint should be able to tell that the people that are the most biased are the people that benefit the most from the problem. And when you look at those, it's big businesses like Exxon or any company that directly relates to pollution, pretty much. The things, not by polluting, but their products that cause the most pollution, because that's the one that's most related to global warming in the way it's presented by the scientists, saying, hey, you shoot all of these things into the atmosphere, and it's bad for the environment. So let's put laws into place so you don't do that. If you can disprove or try to disprove anyway, or invalidate the science in some way, whether it be popular opinion or actually disproving something, very different things. Then you can get more funding or avoid major tariffs or problems because they're polluting still, because it costs money to fix that. So who are the people that benefit the most? That when you look at it through that standpoint, you can kind of see that the politicians are the ones that benefit the most, so that they are most likely, not all of them are going to be, but they are the most likely to be biased towards this. The people that have large shares or that have been visited many times by lobbyists to make deals, which for whatever reason people know happens but ignore. Because as soon as after the Pope made this comment, Exxon sent lobbyists to Rome to try and convince him to change his stance. That happens. I mean, if people send lobbyists, which they do, companies, large companies that have a major stake in this conversation, because if the conversation goes towards, yes, we should probably impose stricter laws on pollution, then the companies that have the highest amount of pollution are going to suffer the most financially, on the short term anyway. And so that they will try to change that. They will try to avoid this conversation, or they will try to turn it towards their own goals. So they send large amounts of money through, either it be lobbyists, airtime, or direct donations to the people that already agree with them, so that they can sway the way they're voted. And when that happens, you get this kind of self-perpetuating problem, because I'm not saying anything about global warming besides figure out who is misinforming who. And in this regard, it's probably the politicians that are paid to say what they say, and almost all of them are. We know there is corruption, we know there is misinformation, and we know there are people with agendas. Now, having an agenda is not necessarily bad if your agenda is part of your actual job. You have constituents, you have people that you are supposed to represent, but you're also supposed to know as much as possible so that you can inform the people of what's going on because it is your job to know. So yes, you represent them. You are supposed to be the best of the people you represent, either be it the most informed or the most capable or anything. But when you have when you don't have that, when you are more about yourself, or you're more about this very small group within your constituents, or your constituents are super misinformed and you just run with it instead of trying to inform them of what's actually true, or even worse, you purposely misinform them to get them to agree with you, then you have problems. So the whole issue is the politicians are saying, don't listen to the Pope, don't listen to the scientists, listen to me. And that is a problem because even we know as a people, we know that there is corruption and bias within the government. We know that. And yet we still have this apathy, this uncaring of, yet we don't care. I mean, you can say all kinds of horrible things about the politicians, like they're corrupt and whatever. And when they do this kind of thing, we let them do it. Not every time, not all the time, but we don't care enough. We don't, well, I mean, you talk to people about it and their eyes glaze over. They don't want to talk about it. It's controversial. It's emotionally draining. And it causes conflict between you and your friends, whatever. It's hard to talk about sometimes because it's a complex, difficult situation. Because when you're dealing with the idea that the people that the people have elected to represent them are screwing over the world, it's stressful. I mean, some people get really pumped up about it, or they really want to talk about it. Most people don't. I'm not saying all people. But there is a very large amount of people that will just say, I will not talk about politics, or I will not talk about religion, or anything like that. Something that's not easily agreed with, or not easily explained without getting some miscommunications or aggression from other people. Politics is the biggest one, pretty much, besides conflicting religious ideals. Which is more of a personal thing. Politics is more of a, it affects everybody kind of thing, which should be talked about a lot more. When you don't talk about things that affect the world because it's too complex, you're kind of putting it in the hands of others. And again, it's not your prerogative, it's not your job, but the people whose job it is are not doing it well. And we know that. We know that the politicians are, as kind of a generality, either inept, corrupt, or apathetic. And that's not an either or. That's there's those are the three that I usually think about, because they either don't care enough to look into the information, which there were bills that got almost passed because nobody was reading them, or there was people that were, just agreeing with the lobbyists, that the lobbyists were actually writing the bills, which has happened before recently. Then there's the people that, then there's the people that just don't know what they're doing. They don't know how they're supposed to be acting, or what they represent. Like, if you're so inept that you got the job because you wanted a cushy job, which happens, then you're not going to, you could technically try, but that doesn't mean you're going to do even half as well as somebody who, knows what they're doing. They went to school for it or whatever. Businessmen or lawyers or anybody that gets a job, they can be good politicians. They can. But they have to know what they're doing on top of their success. They can't. Being voted in doesn't mean you're the best representative of the people. Having lots of money doesn't mean you're going to do a good job. Being uncorruptible doesn't mean you're going to do a good job. They're good traits to have, and if you have all of them, you're probably going to be a pretty good leader. But very few people have all of them. I don't think I've ever known anyone that's had all of them, but at least in modern day. But it's something to strive for, or at least that should be strived for, and I don't see anyone doing that. There's too much apathy in the system because there's so much going wrong with it. And it's when you stop caring about a failing system, it's going to get worse. I mean, it's not going to get better. It's not like a cold. It's not like we're going to just wake up and somebody else will fix it. Somebody else will fix it. And that might be true, if we get really, really lucky. But I wouldn't base a world power government on luck. It's not good. And we have people fighting the people that are actually trying to make things better. So it's more than luck. It's like we're waiting for a hero to come and fix the world. Or some people just don't think the world's going to last long enough because of war and nuclear weapons and all that stuff. Again, apathy. They just don't care enough. It's like it's too hard. And when you say something's too hard, so you give up, then the problem's going to perpetuate until somebody says, you know what, this isn't too hard. This is worth fighting for, and let's do it. So I'm gonna go all the way back to the beginning of the video and say, hey, okay, the Vatican said this on global warming. Scientists agree with that, saying, yeah, that's true. The politicians say, nope, don't listen to either of those people because they are either completely misinformed or they have an agenda. Those politicians that say that are, by the large, either parroting the conservative movement to push the narrative, or are actually being lobbied and usually funded by the large businesses, because businesses can donate to them, and there are you can actually look at this. You can say, okay, this guy is actually paid this amount of money, their largest donor, which is public knowledge, by this group, and you can actually look at that, and you should probably look at that. Just go and look up whoever your representative is and see where their funding comes from, because it comes from somewhere. They don't do it out of their own pocket, usually. Some of them can, but most of them can't. Millions and millions of dollars don't come out of everyone's pocket. They get donations, and those donations are public, usually. Not always, but it depends on what kind of donation it is. There's different kinds. Super PACs are bad. But, so, what are the people's thoughts on global warming, and why should the people's thoughts on the matter matter? That's my last bullet point, by the way. So, people can be misinformed. People can be misled or just not know or not care to know. They should. This is and that's the thing. If you know, you can have a much more meaningful conversation about it. If you don't know, it's going to be based on opinion, and those are generally seen as arguments, not conversations. So if you look into the matter and don't just try to find something that goes along your preconceived ideas of the concept, I might be wrong. Maybe global warming is not caused by people. Maybe it's caused by something else. But you need to know what it like. I've looked into it somewhat. I went to school. I went to college. I looked into it because it was a political thing, and I like to follow those. So I was like, okay, who's saying what and why? So I looked into it. A lot of the scientists are saying it's real. There's a few that say it's not real. But then when I looked into that, most of them were not saying why it wasn't caused by this. So I was trying to figure out where the origins of these ideas came from, and they were either coming from the scientists or from the lobbyists. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to listen to the lobbyists as much because I know that they're being paid to say these things. So you have to be, and I was still figuring out what they were saying, but they were mimicking each other, so it was really difficult to get past that for me, because I really don't like to listen to that kind of stuff, because to me it's droning, and it's very biased, and I don't like bias, because wording of things is very important for me. Like when you say something, like you hear me say it a lot, it's like most but not all, and some, and I try to use words that aren't all encompassing. But when you're talking to somebody that has an agenda, they use words like all or always or every. And they also use really, really strong language like impending or we must. And it's action words and trying to get people to get a reaction. And those kinds of articles, I do read those. But it's harder for me to take them as seriously as a much larger grain of salt. Because they're designed to try and change your mind, and I have a lot of blocks for that kind of thing. I like information, I like facts, but when people are, and some of them do have facts, but then I always look those facts up and see if they're actually true, because when somebody says something's a fact, it doesn't always mean it is. So when I read those articles, I kind of what's the word? I break them apart. I analyze every single thing they say, and then I try to find the bias. And I do that with every article I read. I like finding the bias. Is like whenever I see a word that it shouldn't be there. You should have used a more neutral word. I like to find those and see how often they come up. Like I read some articles that they were so biased. I was just, and they were funny. They were it was a religious thing, so it's off topic, but every single, like, they were insulting another group, patting themselves on the back, and saying it was a fact when there was absolutely no factual information in the article whatsoever. It was all bias. Every single word was, there was no statistics. There was no arguments that were factual whatsoever. So when I see those articles, I cannot take them seriously. So there are levels. So when you go into these things, when you do your research, when you look into these things, try to find those words and try the phrases like every single or always or, as I said, impending, action words, anything that calls you to action. And just look at all of those, and you'll be able to see it's not necessarily a bias that changes the meaning of what they're saying, but once you find that, you can kind of backtrack it. You can backwards engineer their reasoning. Where are they standing, so that you can see their perspective. That's what I like to do. I like to find other people's perspectives. I'm not always good at it. Some people are very hard to read. But it's fun for me. So in this regard, the people on global warming, they are informed by the media and they are informed by the politics. The scientists are not given as much airtime, and most of their stuff is published in journals that nobody reads. There are scientific journals that are published that the media will pick up and say this is what's in it, but people don't pick up the book and actually read it because they're really technical and they're really hard to understand. It's like picking up a law and reading it, or picking up a religious text that you don't practice and trying to read it. There's a lot of stuff that you don't know and you don't really care to know because it's complex or it's controversial to what you personally believe. If you can pick up, 'cause I've read laws before, they are hard to read because it's all legal fluff. But fluff is the wrong word. It's all legal jargon is what I meant to say. If you can get outside of that just a little bit, just what are you most passionate about? Like the single thing you are most passionate about being gay marriage, immigration, abortion, death penalties, anything. Like it could be anything. Find stuff about it and learn as much as you can about it. Read the laws related to it. Look up all the videos you can on the legal aspects of it and maybe the ethical background of it, the origin of it. Find everything, and just do that. Just do that. Consume as much information as you can and make the most educated. Just talk to people about it. Expand your opinions about it. You don't have to agree with them, but you can understand their sides more. Like, where do they get their ideas? And you can say, oh, I know where that came from. I know where that idea came from, and it actually comes from over here, and then you can teach them. And maybe you won't become an expert in the field where you get paid for it, but you'll know, like, the most, if you are passionate about something, if you love something so much, you should do that. You shouldn't just say, yeah, I know it's my passion, but I already know enough about it. That's not really what it's about. Usually, I mean, you can be. I mean, sometimes you can't learn anything more because you already know pretty much everything there is to know, because the subject might be really simple, but those are not simple. Like, those political things are not simple. Like, the ethical. A lot of people, they'll take something like global warming, and they'll say they know everything about it when they don't, or they know enough about it when they don't. I have this conversation several times where people confuse, weather and, the general thing of the entire world, the global weather. And they don't use the right words. It's not called global weather. And when you go outside and it's hot, or it's cold, or it's raining, or it's snowing, that has nothing to do with the climate of the world. If you say it's cold where you live, you should know why it's cold where you live. Like in Texas. Here's something really quick. It is really, really cold here sometimes, and it actually has gotten even colder sometimes, because when you have more energy in the atmosphere, when you have more heat energy in the atmosphere, there's more wind, there's more shifting of those energies, because there's just more of it. So you have the hot air and the cold air mixing faster, so the winds blow further. So what you have is the I don't remember what it's called. It's a vortex of cold air that comes from the north, like really, really high up above Canada. And it pulls all that air down, like south, through the United States, and it gets farther and farther the more energy there is in the atmosphere. So you get hot summers and really, really cold winters. So when that happens, people are like, well, it's getting colder. It's like, no, it's not getting colder. There's more energy that is making the cold air travel further. That doesn't mean there's more cold air. It doesn't mean there's less energy. It means there's more energy. That is one argument. That's one very basic argument. That it shows how, these are climate scientists or climatologists. And I'm using this because that's what they're actually called, as climatologists. So when you do that, so that is their job to understand these things, and they're trying to inform people, and it's really, people ignore them because they're like, well, yeah, it's really, really cold. I want global warming to happen. It's like, no, global warming is not good. It messes up a lot of things. So whether we say it's because of people or not is questionable, because there's some people saying that the sun is actually changing how much it's heating the planet, because of the distance, or some random thing about the sun going through phases as well. I don't know enough about that. It's cosmology. So when you learn all about these things, and I want to learn more about that as well. I tried to, and it was difficult, and then I had other things to do, but I want to learn more about that, and I'll be able to be more informed about it. But when you have, the sun gives the earth energy. The earth is not an isolated thing. So the sun is giving the earth energy. The energy of the earth is being trapped more because of greenhouse gases and whatever. So there's more energy on the planet, and it's more heat, more wind, and the wind pushes the cold around more. So the cold reaches places it doesn't usually, so it feels like there's more cold. That's the difference between climate and weather. Weather is individual locations having an individual thing at an individual time. Climate is the entire planet, and how it all, like, weather patterns, like, hey, this cold front is coming over here. Well, where did it come from? I don't know. It came from another country. Who cares? Tsunamis, where did that come from? It came from over there. Why? Because this cold front and this thing of biometric, whatever, not biometric, I can't remember the word. A barometer can pick it up. When hot air is below cold air, and they go over each other. The hot air goes up and the cold air goes down, and they hit each other and they make a twirling wind. So all of these things happen, and they get bigger when there's more energy. So there's more of them, and they're more powerful, and they're more damaging. So, and people blame it on whatever reason they blame it on, but those are what causes it. Those are the kinds of things that people need to learn before they say they're experts on something when they're not. Say, oh yeah, it's been cold, it's been getting colder every year. That is so not all of the facts. Yes, it can be colder in your area over the years because of a lot of different reasons. It could be that, okay, we have actually raised the temperature of the planet because of the roads, technically, because they are black and they absorb more sunlight. Because there's so many roads, we have technically raised the temperature of the Earth because of that. Lots of factors. There's a lot of things that people should take into account or consideration when they're testing something. It's like putting your thermometer next to your fridge. Don't do that. Your thermometer next to your fridge is not going to be accurate because there is a lot of hot and cold air blowing past it at all times. And the way a fridge works is really cool, but it's actually constantly blowing out hot air. So when it's closed, it's going to be more hot, and when it's open, it's going to be more cold. So when you're hanging up your thermometer, also don't put it next to a window if you want it to be the internal temperature. If you want it to be the external temperature, put it right outside, but not near where you keep a window opened when you have your AC on. Small things. Heat travels. Cold is technically the absence of heat. Cold goes down, heat goes up. So when you have your fan on, what it does is it circulates the hot air from the roof downward. Or you can have it pull cold air upward, depending on which way it's spinning. So there's a whole bunch of different neat things that you can learn about how things work. And you can make, little things for your kids to play with so they can learn about stuff. And there's just so many neat things that people don't understand, but they think they understand, and they really should learn more if they're passionate about it. These are all just little things. Just they add up. Because those kids grow up and they get jobs, or they talk to people that have jobs, and those people or the kids, they'll become politicians, or they'll become scientists, or they'll become lawyers, or they'll become court justices, or they'll become anything. And they need to learn this stuff. If you're not going to do it, at least try to promote it with them. Show them how much fun it can be to learn. Because when you're older, you have a job, you don't have enough time. Kids have time. Instead of giving him a video game that, is whatever, you can give them, maybe not a chemistry set, because those can be, well, yeah, sure, give them a chemistry set. I was thinking of the old school chemistry sets that were actually dangerous. The newer ones are actually pretty cool. Give them, like, if they want to be a doctor, give them, not medical books, but you can give them, like, there's a whole bunch of things that can show them about how doctors make the world better, or, promote their passions. And show them different ways that they can achieve their goals. Because if the scientists aren't going to be given any form of voice, then you can just promote the knowledge everywhere. Because even if they become a politician, you can still show them how interesting global sciences can be. Like climate, or the geothermal stuff, or the solar stuff, or solar panels are awesome. Like, the solar panels are just really interesting. Like, they just they do what plants do. It's not that they're photosynthesizing, but they're actually grabbing. Well, I guess that is technically photosynthesis, but that's more biological. They grab the energy from the sun and they turn it into usable electricity for us. That's awesome. If we had that technology 40, 50 years ago, which we did, but if we had it better, because we started 200 years ago, we wouldn't be having most of these problems, because it would be way cheaper, because it's a renewable resource. And that's another thing. Renewable resources are renewable. Other things are not. So there is a politician that has said that wind turbines slow the wind across the planet and will lead to global warming. Wind. Now, technically, he is correct. there is a kinetic energy that is lost when wind pushes against something. A single mountain would cause more than pretty much all of the wind turbines in the world. So while he's factually true, it is completely arbitrary to say that that is a factor. That's not a factor, but it is a politician saying it, so he has political power, so his voice is much more prominent than others. He was also paid a very large amount of money to say that, and it has been proven that he was paid a lot of money to say that, and it was blatant black and white corruption. So we need to focus on those kinds of things, and we need to make sure it doesn't happen again. Global warming is a thing that the scientists are saying is true, the politicians are saying is not true. We need to figure out if it is true. I believe that it is true for the most part. I don't know if it's 100% accurate because agendas are being pushed around, and I don't like that. But at least look into it before you say yes or no. Look into it. Don't just say something. I mean, if you're really, really informed about it, yes, cool. If you're not, if the only information you get is from other people, no. Read articles, read the science journals, the statistics of the amount of, just read weather patterns. Look at the weather patterns. It's really hard to do because you don't understand it. Like, what the heck, what is it called? Biometric pressure, bio something pressure. It's the thing that it drops right before tornado hits. I can never remember the word, but there are so many different things that affect the weather in your area. Then it's not just hot, cold, windy, rainy, snowy. There are so many reasons why those things happen, and there's different kinds of each one. There's different kinds of clouds. There's different kinds of wind. There's different kinds of rain and snow and hail. Like, why does it rain hail that's this big sometimes in certain places? There's reasons for it. The reason hail exists is really interesting. Hail is different than stuff like sleet, or why do the roads freeze sometimes? Why do people crash when the roads freeze most of the time? There's a lot of information that people just don't have. So just maybe I said something wrong. Maybe I'm misinforming something because I don't know and I think I know. Tell me, please. I honestly want to learn. So just think about it. Talk about it. Talk to other people about it. Read about it. Learn about it. I could be wrong. There is a very good chance that something I said was either slightly off or completely off because something explained to me improperly, or maybe I read something improperly. Just please respond in some way that I can learn. I'm trying to do this so you guys can learn or understand that you could learn elsewhere. And that's it. I have to go. So I am going to leave this video here, and peace.